I just loved the idea of Bitcoin. It was like a decentralized, in code we trust, don't have to trust anybody, brilliant invention that was the evolution of money.
This is the Home Service Success Podcast, your resource for growing your residential contracting business through mindset development, sales, and marketing strategy. Today, we're diving into the world of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin. Do I even go on? To my knowledge, we're the first in the home services industry to take on the cryptocurrency topic. So we're going to cover some crypto 101 and some basics around blockchain and how it works. Will cryptocurrency be adopted within the home services industry? Is there value to accepting it for your transactions? And we'll talk about some predictions for the months and years ahead. So our guest today has been mining Bitcoin since 2011. So he's an early adopter. He considers himself to be a Bitcoin maximalist, which we'll get into. He's a featured expert on cryptocurrency panels, interviews, and was recently a guest on Real Vision Finance. He runs a podcast, Magic Internet Money Podcast, where he interviews game changers in the cryptocurrency industry with a focus on Bitcoin. So allow me to introduce Brad Mills. What's up, Brad?
Hey, Davis, thank you very much for the lovely introduction. I haven't mined Bitcoin for a while. I just a little tip for everybody thinking I'm still mining Bitcoin. I'm not anymore. It's kind of like a full-on industrial process now if you want to mine Bitcoin in a really profitable way. Otherwise, you could mine it in your basement or in your garage or something, but you won't be making a lot of money. But it's worth trying out if you're interested in experimentation.
Yeah, certainly. And I've heard it's quite energy consumptive. So that's probably another factor there, especially with Bitcoin, which is on the more technical side. But so, Brad, so Bitcoin got started in what, 2008, 2009, and you got into it like within a year or two thereafter. So what initially piqued your interest into Bitcoin in particular and cryptocurrency overall?
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. Like, been trying different tech businesses, and actually one business that I was part of was called Katoto, and it was kind of like HomeJoy for Canada. And if you remember HomeJoy, it was like a home services business, basically like Uber sort of thing, where you could connect with anybody and then get kind of like sit in the middle and connect people to home services providers. And so that didn't really do very well because Canada is a small market and we were too early. But I tried a bunch of different tech businesses, mostly in the game and app space. So I was coming off of running my social game. I had a social game business going on Facebook, and it was a virtual currency based economy. Everybody's aware of like Farmville and all that stuff. So it was kind of like one of those games where there was a virtual currency and people could just play the app and just really waste their time and waste their life, but and give me money. But people need entertainment, and that's one way to get entertainment. And I was kind of blown away that people were interested in giving money for virtual currency. They'd give me the real money, right? And to go back just quickly a little bit, I grew up in poverty, so I kind of have like a mental framework around money as just something that like I didn't understand or something I didn't have. Grew up on the east coast of Canada where it was a lot of like seasonal work, and a lot of us relied on the government for employment insurance checks and stuff. And there was a lot of entrepreneurial spirit there too, but still there's a lot of seasonal stuff. And people just don't think about money. You try to like achieve money and achieve your goals with money, but people tend to not look deeply at like what really is money. And this is all kind of, I promise I'm wrapping this all up in a package here. So I'm in this industry where I'm kind of becoming an entrepreneur. I'm discovering what it's like to have money because my game is actually starting to take off. I'm making like 6 figures a month with this game. I'm going from like living in poverty basically to having 6 figures a month in revenue from my business, realizing that people are willing to pay me for virtual currency. And I'm starting to learn about it. I'm like, okay, well, what should I do with my money? Should I start another business? Should I invest in my business to grow it? Should I invest in gold or the stock market? Or like, what the hell do I do with this money? Because it was just starting to pile up in the bank account. And so I kind of did a mixture of all of it. I reinvested some back into the business, tried to scale it up. I started buying gold. I started reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and tried to learn from people to discover what's the best way to invest and grow your money through investing. And then it was like coming off the 2008 collapse where the bailouts had happened, and that whole Occupy Wall Street movement sort of spoke to me because it felt really unfair that all these banks that caused the crisis to happen are getting printed trillions of dollars to get bailed out while people are losing their jobs and losing their homes. So it's like a culmination of all those things where I'm like learning about money. I'm pissed off at the system. It's like feels like a big scam where the banks are getting bailed out and the taxpayers are getting left with the bill. So then that's around when I saw Bitcoin in 2011, and I was learning from like Robert Kiyosaki and folks like that about the value of gold as an alternative to holding dollars. Because if they just keep printing trillions of dollars, it's going to make the dollars in your bank account worth less. And there's charts that you can see that go back to like 100 years where like the value of a dollar now has eroded its value of purchasing power. It's like 95%. So gold has held its value over that 100 years. You could buy pretty much the same amount of stuff like goods and services that you could with 1 ounce of gold 100 years ago as you could right now. But $2,000 100 years ago would have you'd have been man about town with $2,000.
Right.
But now you can barely afford what can you afford with $2,000? Like a computer? It's getting pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a great one, but a good one.
Yeah, you can't even afford like an Apple computer with $2,000 these days. So dollars over time don't hold their value, and we've all been trained to save and pay off our debts and try to get these dollars. And then in the end, you're like, why do I want these things? They're actually going down in value pretty quickly. And if I'm trying to earn, like build up my business for my family and for my heirs and like create generational wealth, why am I going to want to have it sitting in this asset that's depreciating over time? So I'm going to leave my children with this pile of money that's continually going down in purchasing power. So gold was kind of like the answer for 5,000 years as the real sort of money.
Yep.
And then when Bitcoin was invented, it was the first time that we've able to have the evolution of gold where it's electronic. It's just like, Netflix disrupted Blockbuster. And that's sort of happening with money right now. We've figured out, it's like, I actually think Bitcoin is one of the greatest inventions humans have ever discovered, because it does allow you to remove trust from storing your value somewhere, because there's no company, there's no team, there's no one founder or anything like that. Nobody can control Bitcoin. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's like gold in that way, that there's nobody that can just change the properties of gold. Just like money, they're constantly interfering with the dollar and the interest rates and like how much they're going to print, which screws everybody really, because it hurts people that are probably watching this, because if you got money and you're successful with your business, you're saving your money, you're actually losing purchasing power in dollars.
Yep.
And people that haven't yet had that success, which is most of the people in the world, they're actually getting screwed more, because the way that they print money and keep interest rates low, it benefits the rich way more than it benefits the poor and the middle class. And it actually grows the wealth gap. So if you're kind of like care about like the social impact and governance and stuff, it doesn't feel good to be part of a system that actually like widens the wealth gap. So I just loved the idea of Bitcoin. It was like a decentralized, in code we trust, don't have to trust anybody, brilliant invention that was the evolution of money.
Totally. So you're looking at it as a store of value, which is your primary thing. So you're acquiring all this cash, just to kind of sum up what you just said. You're acquiring this cash, you're a successful entrepreneur at this point, and you're going, well, shoot, my dollar's losing value now, losing purchasing power. So I want to go look at other assets like gold, like maybe equities. And Bitcoin just kind of falls into, as a compartment, into that larger strategy that you had. Now, to push back on this idea of a store of value, because I think this is probably a question our listeners have, you look at the volatility of Bitcoin in particular, or any cryptocurrency, and you go, well, shoot, Bitcoin 3 weeks ago, as of today, it's what, June 1st, 2021. 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was at 60, 65,000, it was topping out there. Today it sits at 35, something in there. So you talk about store of value, my initial instinct would be, well, gee, this isn't nearly as stable as the dollar would be. But it's a different philosophy. So I just want to pick your brain on that, Brad.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're talking about Bitcoin and 10 years later, it's more of a store of value now than it was when I first heard about it. When I first heard about it, it was kind of like probably the way that your viewers are thinking now about if they're interested in like crypto, quote unquote crypto, like Doge and ETH and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, to me at the time, it was just like exciting. Like, what is this? I got to be part of it. It seems like it's this movement and this revolution and this like investment opportunity where I could make a lot of money if I get involved early. So I was more motivated at that time by like, partly because I was an entrepreneur and I'm like looking at the next big hot thing I want to be part of, partly as somebody who's trying to figure out like, what should I invest my money in? Because the stock market obviously is a big scam. They're just going to bail out all the banks and this has to blow up at some point. So I don't want to have my money sitting in the stock market. Gold is kind of like a boring, stable store of value, but at least it's not, at least it's going to hold its value relative to dollars, which are going to continue to go down in value over time. So there was all these factors at play when I was deciding with Bitcoin. So I did look at it more at that time as like a kind of like a hedge bet. It's like this thing could 100x. Like I could put like a small amount of my net worth in here. And I'm talking like not a lot of money because at the time I was like, I was running a business. So I had lots of expenses and stuff. But I decided, all right, well, if I was going to buy gold and silver, so I decided, all right, I'm going to take half the money that I'll invest in silver and I'll buy Bitcoin with it and I'll start mining it for fun. And so that was Bitcoin at the time was $10 and silver was $40. Today, silver is like, what is it, $20 or $30? So it's gone down by half. And
Right.
Bitcoin's like, what, 36,000 or so. So the Bitcoin outperformed the silver quite a bit. That's not really a store of value. That's like a bootstrapping currency that's got like amazing gains.
Yeah.
So that was the last 10 years. We're heading into the next 10 years of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do still think that if you look at it over a long time frame, really the best way to look at crypto and Bitcoin is just look at Bitcoin as a way to store your value over long time frames. I really don't think that most people that are listening to this are going to want to end up becoming like full-time crypto traders or like full-time crypto investors, like sorting through white papers and like reading technical analysis papers and shit and trying to figure out like, what do the tea leaves say about Dogecoin? Is Elon going to tweet something good about Dogecoin? Like that just, you probably don't have the time on your hands to pay attention to all this stuff. And it's like, there's FOMO involved here because we're in a bubble. And yes, it cooled off because recently the price of Bitcoin went from like a top of like 60,000 down to like 32 or something like that. Now it's kind of like recovering on the way back up. But it's very volatile, like you say. So the altcoins, every single one of the altcoins are way more volatile than Bitcoin.
Right.
And they're all correlated to Bitcoin. And it's really confusing when you're new to this thing because you're thinking like, oh, I guess if this is the future of like money and equity and value, then I should be investing in the technology that can do smart contracts and that can do like faster transactions and that can do like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Because I think about Ethereum and I think about, okay, it has utilitarian value. Like it can be used to support other applications. It's more like an operating system where Bitcoin is purely just digital gold in the sense that we're talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's really confusing for people that are coming into this. And a lot of people, this has happened so many cycles where people get sucked into when the price goes up. It's like, it gives permission for all the whales and like insiders that own most of these other coins to start pumping them and to start like doing ads and stuff. And like last cycle, it was like a bunch of people like Tizen and stuff like promoting their cryptocurrency courses and like spending millions of dollars advertising to you all over the internet, sucking you into like the next big Bitcoin. And then when the market turns and the FOMO stops and people go back to their like regular lives and they stop paying attention to the bubble, whether it's the pot bubble or the crypto bubble, the prices get wrecked on all these altcoins because they're just like there to make somebody else rich is the way I look at it. Like they're all controlled by other people. That the biggest, most important thing about what makes cryptocurrency valuable is decentralization.
Mhm.
Like that's the whole thing about a blockchain. It's removing trust and allowing me and you and like anybody that has the ability to turn on a computer and install the software to be the network.
Yeah, it's not a government, it's not an individual or an organization. It is just purely a protocol that everybody has equal access to.
If you can defend the protocol.
Hmm.
And that's why Bitcoin is the one that's actually most important and decentralized, which is what matters in giving value to a cryptocurrency. Because if the government can decide to just turn against this new asset class and say, well, you know, you're not allowed to have this anymore. We're gonna turn this off because it's financing terrorism, or they'll make something up, right, to kind of like demonize it and then shut it down. Every other cryptocurrency is centralized. There's a foundation that's in charge of it. There's like Ethereum, which is the one that all the narrative is really strong for right now, for it's got utility value. I mean, it's significant majority of everything that happens on Ethereum is centralized through a company called Infura, which runs the nodes that everybody else looks at. And it's pretty much just an Amazon hosted system. And we all saw what happened with Trump getting banned from Twitter and Parler getting shut off from AWS and removed from the app stores. That centralization is a really serious problem. If you, and this is not like a comment on politics, it's just a comment on the power of centralization to remove like your ability to speak or to post your thoughts or to use money in the way that you see fit. And because Bitcoin is actually decentralized and it's like 100,000 of us are running nodes across the world, it can't be banned. But if the government really wanted to take over Dogecoin or like or like Ethereum or something, there's a couple of phone calls they make. They can haul a couple of people in front of Congress and then like censor the network and start to limit your ability to use it how you see fit. Just like they did with Parler and just like they did with on the social media sites, like with the fact checkers and all that crazy stuff.
Interesting. So that's why you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist, is because Bitcoin is really the only one, as it stands today, that is truly decentralized. And is
Yes, yeah.
traditional financial, political, what, the whole system, as we might call it.
Yeah, and this is like kind of like in the weeds stuff, but it's foundationally important for anybody that's looking at this because it's easy to see the flashy ads and like the YouTubers and the crypto Twitter influencers who are saying you got to get this coin because it's good for the whole supply chain management industry and it's going to be $1 trillion one day. Like all that utility talk, it's not foundational to the value of the cryptocurrency. And like for instance, the utility of Bitcoin is the fact that it's giving us the ability to store our value for the first time in history in a way that you can zap the value around through the internet, just like gold, but digital. And no one can shut it down and no one can control it. And the idea that that's not like, and I'm not saying this for you, Davis, it's like this is a common theme. Everybody's saying this stuff and it's coming from the top down. I think it's like a narrative that's getting pushed that like Bitcoin has limited utility.
Yeah.
Well, money is like the most biggest utility on the planet. Every single person in the world touches money in some way. Even like the poor farmer in Indonesia or whatever is using $1 a day of whatever his currency is, or is using like goods and services as money to barter. Everybody uses money. Now, all these other things like smart contracts and like I mean derivative trading on the blockchain and decentralized finance and all these buzzwords you hear about, dApps and ICOs and NFTs is a huge one that's going crazy.
Yep.
That stuff is not like relevant for everybody in the world. Most people in the world just the biggest utility value in the world is going to be money. And most people in the world just want to kind of like get by. And they don't necessarily want to start speculating on NFTs and like in order to flip like NBA Top Shots cards for 10x or something like that. That's not really like, I bet you the people that are like watching this are probably thinking, I wish I could just kind of like put some money in this and then not think about it again. and not have to go like figure out all this stuff and not like have to pay attention to the next big Bitcoin.
So
And
that's the perfect segue, actually, Brad and Steven. I want you to chime in on this as well. Is what are we seeing in terms of using cryptocurrency? And maybe we want to just use Bitcoin as an example here for consumer transactions. And I know this has come up in some of the home industry services groups that we're involved in. Like, are people accepting cryptocurrency? And certainly, everybody's, maybe not everybody, but it's popular knowledge that Tesla was going to accept Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin goes through the roof, and then all of a sudden, no, we're not going to accept it anymore for to buy a Tesla, and then Bitcoin goes down. So what is the value and what's the practical value of Bitcoin, and should home service business owners be considering this as a form of transaction for their services?
So I would say at this point, I would say that you shouldn't try to accept Bitcoin as a way to boost your business or something like that. Like the benefit to accepting Bitcoin at this point is like a marketing push, and it's just a minimal effect at best. The the reason why you want to like get Bitcoin is so that you can potentially get exposure to this growing asset class over the next 10 years. And I've recently got a deck or a deck and a fence built in my backyard, and I paid my contractor his wages and his material costs in dollars. And then there's like a premium that he charges for just like his services. And I paid him that in Bitcoin, and he was willing to accept it in Bitcoin. So, I mean, there's a calculation you can make that like if you've got hard costs that you need to cover in dollars, because we all deal with dollars, right? Just continue to like do your business normally and cover your hard costs. But then I really do recommend that people should take extra like disposable income or whatever, and either accept Bitcoin that way or convert your dollars into Bitcoin and start saving in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, and I do agree with the point that it's kind of a marketing thing where it opens up potentially a broader market. Although, if you're doing transactions in Bitcoin, you obviously have the ability to do the same in dollars. But it's interesting.
If you want to do it, there's like OpenNode, Breeze Wallet, BTC Pay Server. Those are the three things I'd suggest. If someone really does want to actually accept Bitcoin, which I think you should do it, if you want to tinker around and kind of add this into your business, I do think it's gonna grow massively over the next 5-10 years. And if you're already integrating with it now, you're ahead of the competitors. So it is something to add to your make you unique for marketing or whatever, network effects. Sure, Breeze Wallet has a merchant services point of sale system thing. BTC Pay Server has one, and OpenNode. So for sure, check it out. Like Google those and watch some YouTube videos on those, and definitely get integrated with it. But don't expect that just because you start accepting Bitcoin, there's going to be this flood of Bitcoiners now using your business.
Right.
It might happen, but like I think it's 150 million people right now have Bitcoin in the world. And, that's a pretty small percentage compared to all the people in the world. So it's not yet at market saturation. We're like crossing the chasm now into it becoming mainstream. And until it gets there, it's like kind of diminishing returns for accepting Bitcoin right now. It's not like you're going to attract all this new business because there's not actually that many people that are using Bitcoin as a currency. Because right now, Bitcoin is volatile, like you said. It's meant to be more of like an investment, a way to store your value over long time frames. If you're just thinking short term, you're not going to want to spend your Bitcoin. If you bought Bitcoin at $60,000, say at the top of like the last month or last couple of weeks ago, you're not going to want to spend it at $35,000. You're going to want to wait until it's like $200,000, and then maybe you'll probably spend some on getting a new deck or something like that. But most people that are interested in Bitcoin right now are using it as a store of value. They're using it as a savings account, because our money here in North America and most of like the Western world is not really as broken as in places like Nigeria and Venezuela and places like that, where you're actually seeing people use Bitcoin as money.
Yeah.
Like here, we're using Bitcoin as a way to like protect ourselves from inflation. But in places where the currency is devaluing like percents a day, they're using Bitcoin as a way not just to protect against inflation or hyperinflation, but actually to use it peer to peer as like a method of exchange and a money. And it's way more accelerated adoption in countries like Nigeria, where they've got like Bitcoin ATMs on like all the street corners, and like all the corner stores have like Bitcoin wallets set up, and there's WhatsApp groups where people are just like trading Naira and dollars for Bitcoin. It's pretty awesome to see that where the like the need for Bitcoin as a way to like protect against a hyperinflationary currency, it's actually being adopted by the people there.
Yeah, totally. Well, man, I've got a couple more questions, but Steven, you've just been smiling and listening in, so I want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have here.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been, I guess I've been quiet on purpose because Brad knows what he's talking about. The point is to educate people that are listening a little bit about Bitcoin and crypto and stuff, because it is such a hot, and I would consider it almost like a controversial topic, right? Like Davis, you mentioned in the Facebook groups and stuff in home service right now, it's either like, it's either people are like, this is the dumbest thing ever, and it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's going to go away, or it's like, yeah, I believe in it, but I have no clue actually what it is, right? Like there's still so much that's like fuzzy, it's like going into a dark room and you can smell something and you're like, it kind of smells like pizza, but I can't see anything. Like it's so hard to even have a conversation around it. And it's so emotionally charged, right? Like people are very emotional about it. They're like, oh my gosh, I hate it. I love it. I don't understand it. And so I don't know. I have a ton of thoughts on it. I mean, I have a lot of my personal beliefs of what I'm doing, and I tend to side with where Brad is on my personal beliefs. I mean, I do invest in Bitcoin, and I have been for several years now. I believe that it will continue to go up. But here's what I guess I got out of this that Brad said, at least especially for our listeners. Don't worry as much about taking this as a currency within the business world right now, like for transactions, because that's one of the big questions that we get. And I think Brad did a really good job answering that. But if you believe that, if you don't believe that this is just a fad and it's going to go away, then you should probably be somehow finding a way to invest a little bit in Bitcoin and some of the others if you desire, because I believe that it's going to continue to go up. I have no clue. It could go back down to like 10,000 and then go up to 60 and then back to 12 and then up to 100. I mean, who knows? But I think over the next 5 to 7 years, we are going to see some big increases. And I mean, look, Brad, I'd love your insights on this. If all of these big investors and banks and stuff are starting to get on board with this, to me, that's enough to tell me that this is never going away, right? Because we still have people like, oh yeah, it's just going to go away. It's a fad. That's pretty clear to me that this is not going away. And I kind of think about it like the internet, right? It's like in the beginning of the internet, you have all these, old, really wealthy people saying, oh my gosh, the internet, like that's the dumbest thing ever. Nobody's going to use the internet. That's what I feel like we're in right now. Right? It's like the very beginning stages of the internet, and all the all the different cryptocurrencies are like all of the different, Netscape, and then you have, Internet Explorer, then you have Microsoft, then you have Apple, then you have Compaq, and you have Dell, and you have how many other computer and internet companies that were big for a minute and then just crashed and burned. Like that's kind of how I equate to what's happening. Like who knows exactly who's going to be the Microsoft in this world or the Apple yet. I don't know. So,
well, I do think you got a point there that the network effects of Bitcoin being adopted by the institutions and like the banks who used to say it was like rat poison and stuff like that. And Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan used to say, like, if I catch any of my traders messing with Bitcoin, they're going to get fired. Now JP Morgan is setting up a whole Bitcoin product, and like they're assimilating with the Bitcoin network. They have to. PayPal used to ignore Bitcoin. Now PayPal allows you to use Bitcoin, and it even allows you to withdraw your Bitcoin. Venmo is another huge challenger bank app for Americans that is massive, and they've seen the growth of Bitcoin and they integrated with Bitcoin. So I think the better analogy is to look at Bitcoin rather than looking at it like there's Bitcoin is Netscape and Ethereum is Microsoft, like Explorer, and Cardano is Spider Web or whatever. Like rather than looking at it as like these are all companies, I look at it like Bitcoin is the base layer protocol that the internet was built on. It's TCP/IP.
Mm.
And the Bitcoin network is TCP/IP. And then there's a second layer technology that's being built right now called the Lightning Network, which allows people to build things on top of Bitcoin in a more scalable way. And that's like layering on another layer of the internet, like HTML or what's the email one? I forget the email one.
Well,
Mime,
like
whatever it is.
SMTP, MIME, and all that.
SMTP,
I
yeah.
don't know.
So there's different layers that can be layered on. And I feel like the other cryptocurrencies are more like, do you remember Bill Gates used to promote the information superhighway back in the day?
Yeah.
So like EOS is like, intranets, and Ethereum is like the information superhighway. And AOL was like building a layer to compete with the internet. Like AOL was an internet, but it was like a gated internet that didn't really mesh with the main internet. But AOL ended up becoming massive. That's,
Mhm.
in my opinion, that's like what Ethereum is, or one of these other cryptocurrencies. It's got a ton of VC backing. It's got billions of dollars being put into it, invested by people that want to build up like DeFi and NFTs and all this stuff. But in the end, it's like forcing a centralized like AOL type of network to the public, when the winner is going to be the one that's actually open and decentralized and foundational, like Bitcoin. So TCP/IP is Bitcoin, in my opinion, and that's why companies are integrating with Bitcoin, and they're not like just allowing you to buy Bitcoin. They're actually allowing like integration, and they're assimilating with the Bitcoin network. So 100% is not going away. It's up for debate whether the cryptos are going to go away. Um, I don't want to get too far into that. Obviously, like there's countries right now, like China has its own internet. So China's internet is huge. Like it's not connected to the regular internet. You can tunnel into it and you can use VPNs and get to it and stuff. But there's balkanization of the internet happening in different countries where they restrict you. So for sure there can be big cryptocurrency networks alongside of the Bitcoin network, but I think the Bitcoin network is going to win. It's got the Lindy effect. It's here the longest. The Lindy effect is this concept in economics or tech where as long as something has a lead, it's going to continue to have that lead because it's got massive network effects. So Bitcoin is by far the one that has the Lindy effect. And as we see with the price and all these people that are accepting Bitcoin as payment and starting to allow their customers to buy Bitcoin, it's going to continue to just suck in more and more companies that want to integrate with Bitcoin. Otherwise, they feel like they're going to get left behind.
Gotcha.
So, and then kind of going back to like wrap it all in with even the question from before, Davis, your comment about volatility. This is something that I think your members will really relate with. Like Bitcoin is volatile because you can see the price of it going up and down. The dollar is actually pretty volatile,
Right.
but you measure the volatility of the dollar not in the exchange rate of the dollar, but in the value of the things that everybody uses daily. For instance, like lumber is something that a lot of your members probably have seen the price of go skyrocketing in the last year with since March, the Black Thursday crash in the stock market. Oil went negative, which was insane. And then the Federal Reserve started just printing trillions of dollars and pumping it into the stock market and pumping it into the banks. And that caused a supply sort of disruption along with all the lockdowns and the COVID restrictions and stuff. There was a bit of a supply disruption, but it's not like the price of lumber and the price of goods and services, the price of homes have gone crazy. The price of like whiskeys and like wines and cars and everything is going crazy, especially collectors items.
Yep.
Like some people collect shoes and some people collect Pokemon cards. All this stuff is going up in price. It's crazy how high prices of things are going.
Yeah.
So you can see the effects of the volatility of the US dollar and the effects of the inflation of all this money printing. You can see it in the price of lumber and in the price of a home. And that's the things that like that's like the canary in the coal mine for inflation. When you see the prices of stocks that are trading at 1,000x PE ratios, that's insane. Like that, there's no fundamental value in the stock market anymore. It's not like this stuff is driven by the price, the earnings that the companies have. It's driven because the Federal Reserve and the central banks are just pumping money into the markets to keep them up. Because if they stop doing that, what's going to happen? People are going to lose their jobs because the stock market's going to crash. Companies going to have to lay people off. We'll go into a recession, if not a depression.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be horrible.
Right.
So what are they doing? They're trying to just stop a depression. So they're just pumping money into the system. And we saw recently Biden's now going to give $3,000 a month to anybody with a kid. I don't know how long that's going to last for. Canada, we've had this CERB thing in Canada for the last year. It's like a couple $1,000s a month if you're out of work. Where's that money coming from?
Right.
I mean, if they can
Magic.
just, yeah, it's mad. It's like Biden's budget is what, $6 trillion now?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you need to pay taxes if they can just print $6 trillion?
Right.
What is this? What is the point? This is like fundamentally, this doesn't make much sense. Like it's just math, right? Like the math doesn't add up. You can't just keep printing trillions of dollars and have it not affect the currency.
Right.
So what are people doing? People that have money, like wealthy people, are investing their money. They're trying to get rid of their dollars. They're trying to invest it in real estate, or they're trying to invest it in the stock market, or buy gold or Bitcoin, which has become a real serious asset class now since people like Paul Tudor Jones and Stan Druckenmiller and all these like billionaire Ray Dalio, all these super successful, wealthy billionaires saw what happened in 2020 after the COVID crash. They saw Bitcoin survive that. And they said, this is a serious asset class. It's actually time to start looking at Bitcoin as a way to protect yourself. Take a 1 to 5% like slice of your portfolio, put it in Bitcoin as a hedge, just leave it for 10 years. And, you know, if Bitcoin succeeds, it goes to $1 million and becomes like a $20 trillion asset. You just like protected yourself from all this inflation and downside risk in the rest of the economy blowing up. And I do think that's probably the best way for your members to like navigate this, because thinking about Bitcoin over long time frames, it is a store of value if you're thinking as like a, you know, like an Ent from the Lord of the Rings or something. If you're thinking like really long time frames, you know, and don't pay attention to the inter-month swings. Just keep dollar cost averaging, like put like 5% of your net worth into Bitcoin as a way to just think about it long term as a hedge against these central bankers and money printers just continuing to devalue your money. And then keep working on your business, and hopefully the price of lumber doesn't 10x. You should be okay.
Right. No, Brad, I think that's great advice. And I think it's very pertinent for our listeners. I mean, Stephen, we hear a lot about how the cost of goods have just gone up so much in the last few months, along with the price of lumber and all these other commodities. So, no, Brad, that was a perfect summation of kind of what's happening with fiat right now, floating currencies, and how you can kind of hedge your bet with Bitcoin in particular. But you know, keeping your eye on cryptocurrency and keeping an open mind on it. So, with that, we are just about out of time here. Stephen, is there anything else that you wanted to cover with Brad, or anything else for our listeners?
I would say this to anybody listening is, if you're one of the people that is just saying like, oh my gosh, this is the dumbest thing ever, or even on the flip side of that, just going all in blindly, but you actually have not done any research on your own, I would encourage you to go and learn a little bit about this, because a lot of times, as you know, as humans, we're afraid of stuff that we don't understand, right? And then with all of the news and all of that, a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this absolutely sometimes, is just headline reading, right? Like I'll skim a headline and I'm like, oh man, like Bitcoin's dead. Okay, well, I guess Bitcoin's dead. And so just be cautious. Like the internet wasn't cool. The internet wasn't going to make it. You know, like how many things have there been along the way, like yellow pages, right? So, you know, Brad, a lot of our clients 20 years ago used to get most of their business out of the yellow pages. Well, then Google came along in 2002. Then you had Google pay-per-click. Google pay-per-click took it away from the yellow pages. Early adopters of pay-per-click really grew their businesses. Now you're getting rid of a lot of things in pay-per-click, and now you have Google local service ads. So just take the time to learn a little bit about this, and don't just push it off one way or the other and be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be dead, or the volatility is insane, it's not going to be anything. As an intelligent business owner, take some time to learn a little bit more about it. And then, like Brad said, if you feel like it's a good potential hedge or a good investment, then put a little bit into it. I mean, in my opinion, like, geez, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you put some in there? Like, it's not going to go away. And in 10 years, the dollar is going to be worth, whatever it's worth in 10 years. But just take a little bit of time to learn, and then pay attention to what is your intention with this. So Brad, I think, gave a lot of really good information about, like, okay, do I use it as a transactional currency in my business? Probably not quite yet, right? Like, that's one of the big questions that we got, like, oh my gosh, should I be accepting Bitcoin? I think Brad did a really good job of answering that. Like, probably not yet. Do you want to do it if it's just cool and fun for your business? Sure, why not? Say you take Bitcoin, but it's not going to make a huge difference in your business today. But if you're looking at it from an investment opportunity, then that could be a really good place to put some intention behind learning more about it right now. And don't just headline read. Actually go and listen, because Brad brought up some really good points about a lot of these other cryptocurrencies. They are genius marketers with tons and tons of money. And some of them are just convincing you to give them money with some fake promise of some, becoming a millionaire. And
Yeah,
that's
like
exactly what's happened over and over and over.
In the end, these things, all these cryptocurrencies, they're all competing with Bitcoin as money. And they like to say, like, oh no, we're store of value. We're not store of value. We're a utility for smart contracts, or we're faster payments, or we're private payments, or we're like a distributed ledger, whatever buzzword they're using. If it's trading in an open network, like if you can find it on CoinMarketCap or something like that, like, which all of them are there, they're competing with Bitcoin in the end. Like, no matter what they say, these things are all competing with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin there's only 21 million Bitcoin. No one's ever going to be able to change that. We know the supply of Bitcoin. The code was written and released by the anonymous creator of Bitcoin, and then the guy disappeared. He can't change it. Like, nobody can change it. We don't even know who this guy is, or girl, or group, or whatever. But the fact that, like, all the smartest minds in the world have come and looked at this and tried to break it is amazing. Like, there's $1 trillion worth of value being locked in Bitcoin, and no one's been able to break it. It's the biggest computing network on the planet. It's bigger than the United States government. It's bigger than Google, Facebook. Nothing can break Bitcoin right now. Like, short of like aliens coming with advanced like quantum computers or something like that. No, and we'll see what happens when the Congress comes with that disclosure. We'll see. But
it's coming any day now, right? Like a couple days.
The alien currency, after all.
I think it's like there's the military has been teasing this UAP disclosure thing. I think they found an alien shit coin. That's what the Bitcoiners all call the altcoins, the shit coins. I think they found an alien shit coin. They're gonna try to convince us to buy that instead of Bitcoin. I think that's what it's all about.
The Galactic Federation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Well, this is awesome, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on this topic that is often, foggy and confusing for a lot of people. So you can get more information on Brad at bradmills.ca.
Well, you know what? I would actually say for people in the home services industry, like, the better place to look is hope.com. Hope.com is Michael Saylor's Bitcoin resource website. And like, just go watch anything Michael Saylor says on YouTube. Like, he can say it way better than me for someone who's like looking at Bitcoin as like, should I pay attention to this for my business? Because I like to look at people's, like, I like to recommend Bitcoin as like a personal sort of personal savings technology, like a way to protect yourself against the central bankers who are going to keep printing money and devaluing your savings. Save in Bitcoin. That's the way I like to look at it. But Michael Saylor is a genius when it comes to like talking the talk of a business and like how to like use Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset to protect your shareholder value and all that stuff. And he's got tons of resources for entrepreneurs. that are looking at like, how do I use Bitcoin for my business? How do I integrate with the Bitcoin network? So for sure, hope.com is the next place to go in your journey if you're looking at this for your business. You know, how to use Bitcoin, maybe put some of your corporate treasury in Bitcoin to protect your business against the inflation and against central bankers. And then for your personal, sure, listen to my podcast, but hope.com is a great resource. I'd also like to throw out there for anybody that's got some extra time, Preston Pish has an amazing podcast. He's the host of We Study Billionaires. It's the Investors Network. So Preston Pish studies billionaires like Warren Buffett and folks like that, Ray Dalio, and he talks the talk too. Like he's an excellent resource for anybody that's maybe got like a 7-figure or above net worth that is thinking like, how does this compare to stocks and dollar cost averaging into index funds? And that's the language he speaks. So if you're kind of more successful and you're looking at personal stuff, check out Preston Pish's podcast. Just Google anything from Preston Pish or Michael Saylor. Those guys are amazing resources.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Brad. That is super helpful to get those resources. So yeah, thanks again so much for joining us. And I want to thank our listeners for listening in. If you want to learn more or follow our discussion, check out the Home Service Success and Marketing Facebook group or visit witdelivers.com. All right. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day.